June 18th, 1959, 10:43 at night. Raymond Lewis sat behind the wheel of the midnight blue Cadillac Eldorado, hands gripping the leather steering wheel so tight his knuckles had gone white. In the rearview mirror, he could see Bumpy Johnson in the back seat, relaxed, looking out the window at Harlem passing by, like he owned every brick, every street corner, every soul walking those sidewalks. And maybe he did. Raymond's right hand moved slowly toward his jacket pocket. Inside was a 6-inch switchblade, the kind that opened with a click and locked into place, sharp enough to punch through leather, through fabric, through skin and muscle, and into the soft tissue beneath. He'd tested it that afternoon on a side of beef at a butcher shop on 125th Street. One thrust, straight to the heart. The butcher had nodded approvingly. Clean kill. Tonight Raymond was going to use that blade on the man who'd trusted him for 7 years. The man who'd given him a job when nobody else would. The man who'd paid for Raymond's mother's funeral, who'd sent money when Raymond's daughter was born, who'd called him family. Tonight, for $80,000, Raymond was going to put that blade between Bumpy Johnson's shoulder blades and watch him die in the back seat of his own Cadillac. The plan was simple. Drive to the Hudson River docks. Take the route through the industrial district where the streets were empty after dark. When they reached the warehouse district near Pier 47, Raymond would pull over, say there's engine trouble. Bumpy would lean forward to look. That's when Raymond would turn, blade already out, and drive it into Bumpy's neck. Quick, professional. Then dump the body in the river, torch the car, and by morning, Raymond would be on a train to Chicago with $40,000 in cash, and the promise of 40 more when the job was confirmed. Vito Genovese's people had made the approach 3 weeks ago. A man named Tony Marone, smooth talker, expensive suit, briefcase full of money. He'd found Raymond at a bar in the Bronx, slid into the booth like they were old friends, and got straight to business. We know you drive for Bumpy Johnson. Every day, every night. 7 years of loyalty. That's admirable, Tony had smiled. But loyalty doesn't buy houses, doesn't set up your daughter's future, doesn't give you the kind of life a man deserves after 7 years of watching someone else get rich. Raymond had tried to leave, should have left, but Tony put the briefcase on the table, opened it just enough to show the cash. $80,000, more money than Raymond would make in 10 years driving Bumpy around Harlem. One job, Tony said. One night. Bumpy trusts you completely. You're alone with him every day. Nobody suspects the driver. You do this clean, you disappear. You live like a king somewhere warm, or you keep driving, keep making pennies, and watch Bumpy get richer while you get older. Many details of this era were never officially recorded. If stories like this interest you, feel free to subscribe and stay with us. Raymond took the money, $40,000 up front, hid it in his sister's basement in Newark, spent 2 weeks planning, bought the knife, picked the route, rehearsed the motion, over and over, until it was muscle memory. Turn, draw, thrust, push. 4 seconds. That's all it would take. What Raymond didn't know, what Tony Marone couldn't have predicted, was that Bumpy Johnson had known about the meeting in the Bronx within hours of it happening. A bartender who owed Bumpy a favor had seen Raymond talking to Tony, recognized Tony from previous encounters, and made a phone call. By the time Raymond got home that night with $40,000 hidden in a gym bag, Bumpy already knew he'd been sold. Most men in Bumpy's position would have killed Raymond immediately. 1 bullet, 1 problem solved. But Bumpy Johnson wasn't most men. He wanted to know how far Raymond would go, wanted to see if 7 years of loyalty meant anything when tested against $80,000. So Bumpy watched, had Raymond followed, confirmed the meetings with Genovese's people, saw Raymond buy the knife, and 2 weeks ago Bumpy made a decision. He went to a metal worker in Brooklyn, a man named Victor, who'd been making custom modifications for Bumpy for 15 years. "I need body armor," Bumpy said. "Thin enough to wear under a shirt, strong enough to stop a blade. Can you do it?" Victor could. Within 3 days, he'd fabricated a steel plate, curved to fit against Bumpy's spine, held in place by a leather harness that strapped across his chest and shoulders. It added maybe 3 pounds, uncomfortable at first, but Bumpy got used to it. And for the past 2 weeks, every time Raymond drove him somewhere, Bumpy wore that plate, waiting, testing, seeing if Raymond would actually do it. Tonight was the night. Bumpy could feel it. The way Raymond's hands shook slightly on the wheel, the way he kept glancing in the rearview mirror, the route they were taking, not toward Bumpy's apartment on Edgecombe Avenue, but south, toward the river. Raymond was making his move. "Raymond," Bumpy said from the back seat, his voice calm, "where we heading?" "Thought we'd take the scenic route, Mr. Johnson. Nicer this time of night." "Scenic route to the docks?" Bumpy leaned back. "Interesting choice." Raymond's jaw tightened. His right hand moved toward his pocket again. Bumpy watched in the mirror. Any second now. They turned onto a dark street near Pier 47. Empty warehouses on both sides. No streetlights, no people. Perfect place for murder. Raymond slowed the car, pulled to the curb, put it in park, left the engine running. "Something wrong?" Bumpy asked. "Engine's making a noise." "Let me check." Raymond's voice was too tight, too forced. "You sure about that?" Bumpy's tone hadn't changed. Still calm, still casual, like he was asking about the weather. Raymond turned in his seat. His hand came out of his pocket. The switchblade clicked open, 6 inches of steel catching the dim light from a distant street lamp. And in one motion, smooth as silk, practiced and committed, Raymond lunged over the seat and drove the blade toward Bumpy's back. The knife hit the steel plate with a sound like a hammer striking an anvil. The blade didn't penetrate, didn't even scratch the metal, just stopped dead. The impact traveling up Raymond's arm, shocking his elbow, making his hand go numb. Raymond froze. The knife was still in his hand, pressed against Bumpy's back, but Bumpy hadn't moved, hadn't flinched, hadn't made a sound. Slowly, Bumpy turned his head, looked Raymond dead in the eye. "7 years, Raymond." Raymond pulled back, tried to pull the knife away, but his hand was shaking so badly he dropped it. The blade clattered onto the leather seat between them. "7 years," Bumpy repeated. "Every single day. I trusted you with my life. Literally, alone in this car. You could have done anything, and for 7 years, you were loyal. So when Genovese's people came to you 3 weeks ago, when Tony Marone showed you that money, I wanted to see what you'd choose." "Bumpy, Raymond's voice cracked. "I knew about the meeting. The same night it happened. I knew about the money. I knew you bought the knife. And 2 weeks ago, I had this made." Bumpy reached behind his back, unstrapped the harness, pulled the steel plate out from under his shirt. The surface had a fresh scratch mark where Raymond's blade had struck. "I wore this every single day for 2 weeks, waiting to see if you'd actually do it. And tonight, you did." Raymond couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. His entire world had just collapsed. "Now we're going to drive to Small's Paradise," Bumpy said, his voice still calm, still controlled. "You're going to park out front. You're going to walk inside with me, and you're going to show 250 people what you just tried to do. Because Raymond, if you're going to betray me, if you're going to sell 7 years for $80,000, then everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to understand what happens when you choose money over loyalty. Please, Bumpy, drive." Raymond drove. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the wheel. Tears were streaming down his face, but he didn't wipe them away. Didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered. Bumpy knew, had known for weeks, had let Raymond plan it, prepare for it, commit to it, and then stopped it with a piece of steel. Small's Paradise was packed. Friday night in Harlem meant music, dancing, drinking, deals being made and broken. The 3-piece jazz band was playing something smooth and low. Conversations hummed like electricity. 250 people, maybe more, filling the tables and the bar, the smoke hanging in the air like fog. Bumpy walked in first. Raymond followed, moving like a man walking to the gallows. People noticed immediately. Bumpy Johnson arriving meant something was happening, and the look on his face, not angry, not violent, just cold and certain, meant something serious was about to go down. Bumpy walked to the center of the room. Didn't ask for attention, didn't need to. When Bumpy Johnson stood in the middle of Small's Paradise, people stopped talking, stopped drinking, stopped everything, and listened. "Raymond Lewis has been my driver for 7 years, Bumpy said, his voice carrying through the sudden silence. "Every single day he drove me. I trusted him with my life, considered him family. The room was dead quiet now. Everyone watching. Bumpy unbuttoned his shirt, pulled it open. Underneath was the leather harness, and hanging from it, the steel plate. He pulled it free, held it up, so everyone could see. The scratch mark from the knife was clearly visible. 2 weeks ago, I found out Raymond took $80,000 from Vito Genovese. The deal was simple. Kill me in the car, dump my body in the river. So I had this made. He tapped the steel plate, and I wore it every day, testing him, waiting to see if he'd really do it. Bumpy turned to Raymond. Tonight he did. Raymond was crying openly now, standing in the middle of Small's paradise with 250 pairs of eyes on him. He wanted to run, wanted to disappear, wanted to die right there on the spot. Show them the knife, Bumpy said quietly. Raymond's hand shook as he pulled the switchblade from his pocket. He couldn't meet anyone's eyes. 7 years of trust, Bumpy said. Sold for $80,000. I want everyone here to see this. I want everyone to understand. Betrayal has a face. It looks like Raymond Lewis, and this is what happens when you betray Bumpy Johnson. Bumpy walked closer to Raymond. The room held its breath. I'm not going to kill you, Raymond. You know why? Because death is easy. Death ends the suffering. But living with what you did, waking up every morning knowing you sold 7 years for money you'll never spend, seeing your reflection and remembering the man you used to be before you became this, that's a punishment worse than any bullet. Bumpy took the knife from Raymond's hand, closed it, put it in his own pocket. You've got until sunrise to leave Harlem. I don't care where you go. Chicago, Miami, California, hell itself. But if I ever see you again, if I ever hear your name again, if anyone ever tells me you're back in New York, there won't be a second chance. And Raymond, when Genovese asks why I'm still alive, you tell him exactly what happened. You tell him I knew for 2 weeks. You tell him I wore steel. You tell him he can't buy loyalty in Harlem. Not for 80,000. Not for 1 million. Bumpy turned to face the room. Let me make something very clear to everyone here. I've been running Harlem for 25 years. I've survived Dutch Schultz, Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello. I've been shot at, stabbed at, betrayed before. And I'm still here. You know why? Because I'm always 3 moves ahead. Because I don't react. I prepare. Because when someone tries to kill me, I already know they're coming. He held up the steel plate one more time. This is the proof. 2 weeks ago I knew Raymond would try, so I made sure he'd fail. That's how I've survived. That's how I'll keep surviving. And anyone who thinks they can outsmart me, anyone who thinks they can take what's mine, you better be prepared to find out. I already knew you were coming. Bumpy walked out of Small's paradise. The room stayed silent for a full 10 seconds after he left. Then, slowly, conversations started again, but quieter now. Different. Everyone looking at Raymond Lewis, still standing in the center of the room, tears on his face, the weight of his betrayal visible for everyone to see. Raymond left Harlem that night, took a bus to Chicago with the 40,000. He'd already been paid. Genovese people never gave him the second 40. Why would they? He'd failed. Worse, he'd been exposed. For the next 4 years, Raymond lived in a 1-room apartment on the south side of Chicago, worked odd jobs, drank too much, never spoke to anyone about Harlem, about Bumpy, about what he'd done. The money ran out within a year. Without the second payment, 40,000 didn't last long. December 1963. The coldest winter Chicago had seen in 20 years. Raymond was found dead in his apartment. Frozen, the heat had been shut off for non-payment. He'd been dead for 3 days before anyone noticed. The police report listed it as death by exposure. But people who knew the story, people who understood Harlem's long memory, they knew the truth. Raymond Lewis had died the night he tried to kill Bumpy Johnson. The body just took 4 more years to stop moving. Back in Harlem, the story became legend. Bumpy's steel plate, they called it. Old-timers would tell the story to young hustlers who thought they were smart, thought they could make moves. Bumpy wouldn't see coming. He wore that plate for 2 weeks, they'd say. Knew his own driver was going to stab him and just waited for it to happen. Prepared for it. And when the knife hit that steel, Raymond knew he'd lost before he'd even started. The steel plate itself disappeared. Some said Bumpy kept it in his office at Lenox Lounge. Others said he melted it down, didn't need it anymore because nobody would try that close again. But the message had been sent, had been received, had been carved into Harlem's consciousness with the same blade Raymond had tried to use. For the next 9 years until Bumpy's death in 1968, nobody tried to kill him in a car. Nobody tried to get close with a knife. The guards who protected him, the drivers who replaced Raymond, they all knew the story. They all understood that Bumpy Johnson was always watching, always preparing, always 3 moves ahead. Vito Genovese, when he heard what happened, didn't send another man, didn't try another approach. He told his captains the same thing he'd told them before. Bumpy Johnson doesn't die because he's lucky. He dies because he's ready. And a man who's that ready, who sees betrayal coming weeks before it happens, that's not someone you fight. That's someone you leave alone. The night Raymond tried to stab Bumpy Johnson became more than just a story. It became a lesson. It became proof that in Harlem, Bumpy Johnson's power didn't come from violence alone. It came from intelligence, from preparation, from the absolute certainty that whatever move you were planning, Bumpy had already seen it, already prepared for it, and was just waiting to see if you were foolish enough to try. 7 years of loyalty, $80,000 of betrayal, 1 steel plate that changed everything. That was the equation that defined Raymond Lewis's life and death. And in Harlem for generations afterward, when someone talked about trust and betrayal, when someone questioned whether loyalty still mattered in a world where everything was for sale, somebody would always bring up the story of Raymond Quick, Lewis and Bumpy Johnson's steel plate. The knife never touched skin, but the lesson cut deeper than any blade ever could. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications for future stories and let us know where you're watching from.